In other videos, I have explained about the why, the what, and the how of R500 activities and what we do for organizations. And I've also explained about how we manage parallel realities in the minds of people, how we try to get on the table what people think, what they see, and what they foresee in the near future for the environment that they're in. And that, of course, is vital information for the management. This video is basically about what R500 is not and what we are not doing, but what often people think that we are doing. And what is it that people think that we are doing is basically that we are in some sort of an individual coaching activity, or where we try to bring people into balance with themselves so that they can do the work that they have to do, or do that work better and better work with teams. Basically, that is what most coaches and managers are concerned about. But there is this saying that if you want to get rich, then don't focus on getting rich. And that's the same basically with bringing out the best in people. If you want to bring the best out of people, then when you start focusing on them and their problems and their capabilities and their goals and so on, then you can quickly enter in some sort of an overkill situation. So what is the approach of R500? Of course, our aim is that people perform really well, but it's not just that they do what they have to do, but also that they do what they were not supposed to do, but maybe would like to do inside the organizations, and enable them to the extent that these are good ideas, and discourage them, or at least make them see that it's not realistic to the extent that the ideas are not realistic. So what is it that we do is actually we take people very seriously. And we do that by not focusing on them, but by focusing on their vision for the whole. So we are not asking them how they feel, but more about how they feel about the organization, about the whole moving forward. And instantly when you do that, people start to feel that their voice is more important than just their individual problems, which often they can actually manage if only the whole would do, the environment around them would go where they want it to go and do what they want it to do. So actually by focusing on the periphery of their problems, you actually are able to more quickly help them solve their own problems, but also better perform the task that they are supposed to perform, because then there's no longer an excuse for not being able to perform those. So R500 basically has the protocols to converse with a lot of people at the same time, up to 500 people for one facilitator. So the scalability of what we do is huge, whereas often in coaching and in performance and enhancement, the focus is basically on small groups. What we try to do is we work with wholes, with corporate, very often at the corporate level, or at the level where various business units or autonomous cells are being combined. And the aim is actually to move that whole forward, and that's also what we tell to individuals. And so we take the voice of people seriously about where they feel that everywhere where we all should be going. We're not so much focusing on their own personal situation, although these two can of course be interlinked, and whenever they meet particular individual problems, then we will share those with their consent, and while by anonymizing what they're saying, we will share that information with others and see where actually others can help them resolve their own problems. So it is not true that we are not interested in people's problems, but it's not our primary assignment. Now, we want people to be active across their entire ecosystem and organization, and to say where the whole should be going, but also be able to support whatever initiative they see around where they feel they can be of added value, whereas today they often are being kept in very strict roles. And so we try to promote a highly liquid goodwill organization, but that was subject of another video. Now, what is important here to better understand what we do different from others is that with R500, what R500 does in an excellent way by having these mass conversations is overcoming 3 typical limitations that organizations have issues with. First, when we look at individuals or small entities, very often they have been attributed or they have taken roles and responsibilities that pertain to the whole, but they have difficulty managing. For instance, when an organization has a problem with sustainability, like is this organization sustainable, then they assign some sort of an officer or a department to deal with it. And by doing that, they think actually that the problem will get solved. But what we see is that these big problems actually get solved less when they are being attributed to single individuals or entities. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to turn back the clock. So these people have been put in place, but clearly these people and entities who are rather small inside an organization, but who have to deal with a big problem that crosses across boundaries and silos and so on, or even environments, so also pertain to issues outside the organization. What they typically need is information about the positions of others, the commitment of others, but they also need education about how to relate and how to connect with all these parties outside their own, outside the environments that they were used to work in. They also need access to goodwill. So when they have particular initiatives, they need to know where are the volunteers in the organization that are willing to kind of pre-commit or support whatever they're gonna do. So they need access. And they also need, of course, recognition, because very often these small cells come up with very good ideas, but are not able to implement them, or others implement them, and actually all credit is taken from them. So what we need to do is we need to protect these people whenever they come up with good initiatives, so that what they are doing will not be like only a temporary or have temporary impact, or will be a temporary assignment. So there is a huge need for to enable these people to tackle the big problems, and that's what R500 does, by relating with all the people in an environment at the same time, and by being able to help them in that way. The second limitation that we overcome is that of feedback. It is so that feedback is, in ideal circumstances, all the feedback comes to about a bad practice or an improvable practice would come to the table. But people, in a way, have learned to shut up for all kinds of reasons, because maybe they are not confident about what they have to say. Maybe they keep feedback strategically for themselves, because they might want to come up with feedback later when it better serves their own purpose. They know that feedback often is not being followed up properly, so why would they give it in the first place and put their head above the cornfield? But also there's often social pressures by identifying like who came up with particular feedback, because that shows them in what camp they are and so on. So feedback is a highly sensitive mechanism, and companies very often they just kind of suppose that feedback comes and that there is no issue and that we're all in it together, but that is simply naive. So feedback, people generally shut up, or when an innovation comes, then very often you have the idea that they already told so very often. So very often companies are late with their innovations and with their improvements, and very often they steal the good ideas of people who actually came up with particular ideas already a long time ago, but then they claim all the credit for it. So there's a lot of frustration around feedback and innovations being introduced and so on, and R500 actually now makes sure that when people have something to say, that they can say it in full safety, security, and so on, and that it will be channeled in ways that they will get, that they can gain confidence to say so, but also make sure that they gain all the credit and benefits from it. The third limitation that we overcome is the typical limitation of supervision and backend. So we acknowledge, of course, that in organizations, backends can take care of the logistics, can take care of culture, can also do all kinds of social things really well, acknowledge people, and so on and so on and so on. What they often cannot do is these kind of meta-relational conversations with their people. So try to elevate and actually, get the visions of people for a better organization out. But that is a skill that R500 helps to develop in leaders. But very often there is like a fourth problem, is that typically backends are there to organize for the planned and for the anticipated and for the usual, not for the exceptional, and they're definitely not equipped to deal with the shit of people, so to say, with the feelings that people have about their environment, and definitely not the troublesome relations that that people have with all the things around. So that is where R500 typically is of high added value.